Hi, I'm Ken Francis, California licensed marriage and family therapist, specializing in recovery from addiction and group therapy. Oftentimes my patients ask me which they should go to. Should they go to group therapy or should they go to community support, such as Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, ACA, or Smart Recovery? When you look at the difference between community support and group therapy, it's like comparing apples with oranges. My answer is usually attend both. Both have benefits, and they're like taking two different medicines that on their own are somewhat effective, but when you use them together, there's a synergistic effect and you're more likely to see benefits. Some people like the taste of an apple over an orange, but if you want to get the maximum potential from vitamins, you want to eat both. And that's the same thing with attending a therapeutic group and a recovery fellowship meeting. To be successful, both therapeutic groups and community support meetings need to provide a safe space. If you walk in and you don't feel the safety and security of the room, you're not going to benefit. So first and foremost, going somewhere where the environment is safe is paramount. How the different two modalities achieve this are very different. If you come into group therapy, you most likely have a licensed therapist, somebody who is trained, somebody whose primary goal is to make that meeting safe. As a group therapist, I have extensive training in understanding the different modalities of a group, the different life cycles of a group, and trying to assess the different needs of the members in the group, all while keeping it safe. Community support meeting is basically peer-driven or social model, which basically states these are people helping other people, alcoholics helping other alcoholics, addicts helping other addicts. When you don't have somebody who is trained leading the group, you have to rely on something else to make the meeting safe. This is where the meeting format and the traditions come into play. Most meeting formats in a 12-step or other community meeting include a rule called no crosstalk. Crosstalk is when you refer or you comment on somebody else's share. This is taboo in most meetings, and this is what keeps it safe. You feel like you're able to share without having anybody commenting or judging. This is how we keep the meeting safe. In therapy groups, we have what I call cross-discussion. This is where people do comment or relate with each other's share, but they do it in an environment where somebody is there to create the safety, and if it does not feel safe, the therapist steps in and intervenes and brings the environment back to one of a safe one. And just as you have different varieties of apples and oranges, you have different varieties of therapeutic groups and community support groups. Therapy groups can be very specialized. You can have groups that focus on addiction, focus on trauma, focus on childhood abuse. You can have therapy groups that are basically anger management groups. And oftentimes these groups have an element of education added to them as well. You could have women's support groups, men's support groups, LGBTQ support groups. The list is endless to what you can do with the therapy group. 12-step and community groups can be just as varied. You can have men's stag meetings, women's meetings, LGBTQ meetings, pretty much the same as you have with therapy groups. You can have speaker meetings where the majority of the meeting is comprised of one or two speakers sharing their experience, strength, and hope. You can have meetings that are book study meetings, open sharing meetings, or meetings that are closed. And a closed meeting means that in order to enter the meeting and participate, you have to be identifying as part of that fellowship. So If you go to a closed Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, you need to identify as an alcoholic in order to go into that meeting and share. Open meetings, not so much, but closed meetings, definitely. So it's always important to know what type of meeting that you're walking into. Another difference between group therapy and 12-step meetings is that in a community support meeting, like 12-step meetings, you have structure. In a therapeutic group, you might have more spontaneity. There could be a structure to the meeting, but there can also be the flexibility to move beyond the structure. And this is what we call the group experiment. Group experiment is when you possibly might do a psychodrama or a role play where you're working something through, and instead of talking about something as if it's not in a room, with the group therapy, you bring it into the room and you can do a group experiment, which is recreating what you want to work on, bringing it into the moment and working on it in the here and now. Powerful stuff, and probably why I like doing groups so much. With a therapy group, this is usually something that's scheduled that you attend once a week, twice a week, once a month, whereas with community support groups, they're more on a drop-in basis. If you're feeling like you need a meeting because you're having a day that's really stressful, there's a lot of apps that you can put on your phone where you can just type in the app and the city and the time and find the nearest meeting and just drop in and get your meeting fix that way. Whereas the therapy group, there's a little bit more time management involved with that. And also with a therapeutic group, there's usually a cost, whereas with a community support meeting, there's usually a donation. People usually tend to utilize community support meetings a lot longer than they do therapeutic groups because the cost and the availability. And in conclusion, both have their advantages and their disadvantages. Therapy groups tend to be more short-term, whereas community support meetings usually have a longer shelf life. These are meetings that are accessible for you to give yourself maybe the ongoing support or aftercare once you complete a therapeutic group. But don't be afraid to try both. Both of them need to be safe, but we also still need to feel a little uncomfortable because we don't grow when we're comfortable. As safe as the meetings and the groups might be, there might be some anxiety and some discomfort. I encourage you, go to both. And if you've had an experience you'd like to share, please write about it in the comments below. I'm Ken, and as always, thank you for watching.